and welcome to another episode, our second episode of New York, California Dynasty Talk. Have with me my co-host, partner in crime, Ralph Mancini. How you doing, Ralph?
I'm doing fabulous, man. Let's talk some turkey.
Yeah. So, one of the things I think that the NFL is sort of transitioning to. So in 2018, the only running back taken in the first round was Josh Jacobs. And then, 2019. And then this year, 2020, we only have another running back taken, only one, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, who was taken with 32. Do you think the NFL sort of maybe like transitioning to lesser running backs, or are we seeing a trend here, or what do you think may be the reasoning of just one or two running backs going in the last few years?
I don't think it's because the running game isn't as important as it once was. I think it is. I think that, for any offense out there, a good running game can be either the foundation or a great complement for any offensive attack out there. I just think that it's a big investment that you're making into that particular player. And we see running backs all the time just get hurt, and they suffer some serious injuries at times. We're talking about torn ACLs, torn Achilles heels. It's funny that you brought up some recent players who were taken in the first round. One of them happens to be Rashad Penny, and here's a player that he's not going to be healthy enough to start the 2020 season, and so that's just another example of a running back who, for one reason or other, just can't stay on the field. And so why would you want to make an investment in that type of player? Running backs do not have a long shelf life. I don't care how good they are. Even the great ones at times, they don't stick around for more than 6, 7, 8 years, if that. And 8 years is a long time, actually. So I see that as being the reason why a lot of them are not going in the first round. I mean, you would have to be like a really special generational player, Adrian Peterson, a Saquon Barkley, somebody with those types of skills, I believe, to go in the first round. And I love Josh Jacobs, but is he that type of player? I don't know. I tend not to think so. I think even he was a bit of a reach. But if he gives the Raiders 5, 6 really great years, then it'll all be worth it.
Yeah, and speaking even Saquon Barkley, we're talking about injuries. He was injured last year, and a lot of the games he was suffering from some kind of injury because he was not very good. Like weeks 5 through maybe 9 or 10. We saw him not producing as we saw him his rookie year and up to that point. Then, of course, as the year went on, as he became more healthy, then he started turning around, becoming more Barkley-like. But you're absolutely right. Injuries and do you think also like contracts, like we're seeing these contracts where running backs are trying to just stay away from and push it to the very limit, where you see all these either running backs are holding out or even forgetting a year, like Le'Veon Bell. Do you think the owners is like, well, we don't really want to tie our horses to this guy and have him pay, all this amount of money just to get him hurt again?
Yeah, that's part of the equation as well, and so we saw what happened with David Johnson. I mean, the Cardinals couldn't get rid of him fast enough after he signed to his big contract, and just suddenly, now I know he had his own injuries to deal with, but I mean, to go from where he was in his absolute prime to where he is now, I mean, it's just mind-boggling, and it should really worry owners. And now I know there are a few other teams that have a lot of those same types of decisions that they're going to have to make, such as the Packers, for instance, with Aaron Jones. He's entering his walk year. And I know he was a 5th-round pick, so that's a great investment that they made in him. But now that he enters his walk year, what are they going to do? I would tend to think that you pay him the big money that he's looking for, but you do it over a shorter amount of years. You can't give these players 5 or 6 year contracts. You give them 2-year contracts, maybe 3-year contracts if they're extremely young. But what I'm seeing more and more is once these running backs reach 27 or 28, especially the ones with significant mileage on them, they start heading downhill. And so I think that if the player is south of 27, then you make the big investment. But what does a big investment mean? To me, I wouldn't give any running back out there more than a 3-year contract.
Yeah, so if that continues forth, we're going to see all these running backs on all these different teams. I mean, say goodbye to longevity for running backs on a certain team. They're just going to have multiple teams, 5, 6 teams if they last long enough. And, pretty much the Adrian Petersons of the world, where he was with Minnesota for so long, and, just they're gone. We're not going to have those anymore.
And I think it's incumbent upon these running backs to really work on their skills once they enter the league, because it's very rare that somebody gets drafted and he's going to be able to do everything that's asked from a running back in terms of running, blocking, and all of that, being an inside runner, outside runner, et cetera, et cetera. So I think that the more you can do, the more you better your chances of sticking around for a long time. So to me, the perfect example of that is Frank Gore. A lot of people seem to say, well, he's washed up. He's not the same player. But why do teams keep signing him? And to me, it's because not because, he's got that, explosiveness where he can break off 80-yard runs. No, it's because he could still do a lot of the other things that are required of a running back, such as blocking, pass protection, which is very important. That's something he could still do very well. So the more you can do, and hopefully if you're a running back and you stay somewhat healthy, the more you can do, the longer you're going to stick around.
Yeah, and I think that's important too. Like, where now you're seeing running backs who used to were just more of the Frank Gore kind. They come in and be sort of the banger type. And now you're like, okay, well, your draft status is dependent on how well you can block, how well you can catch, how well you can run inside zone, how well you can run outside zone.
Can you play special teams?
Can you play special teams? And it's all these. The more variables you can put on you as a person, the better high draft stock. And that wasn't a case 5 years ago. It was just, like maybe he could catch, maybe not. Who really cares? But now it's almost all running backs should be able to catch if you're going to go higher in the draft.
Yeah, that's a big part of it for sure.
And speaking of catching, your number one guy, my number one guy. So, and that's Clyde Edwards-Helaire. So first question for you. Is Clyde Edwards-Helaire talent-wise, if we just took his talent, right, would he be the number one back off the board? Or is he the number one back off the board because, A, he's one of the few running backs that will have the backfield to himself, and B, he's playing in that Kansas City Chiefs offense?
That's a great question. Now, I definitely think that, the fact that he ends up in such a potent offense, high octane offense that he's in right now, definitely played a big role in his number one ranking, at least on my list. But purely in terms of skills, I think I'd put him in the top 3. I would definitely put him in the top 3 because of, as we talked about before, I think there's a lot he can do. I think he is very versatile. And, here's the thing with Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Somebody that might never have seen him play at LSU might take a look at his physical stature at 5'7", 209 pounds and automatically assume, well, yeah, he could catch a few passes and he's a nice little scat back, but I think he's much more than that. I'm sure you're familiar with the PFF stats. He was number one in adjusted broken tackle rate, 86% among players entering this year's draft. And the other thing is that on his 214 carries, he broke 70 tackles and only had 1 fumble. So to me, that tells me that he is an effective inside runner, in addition to being a supreme pass catcher who can run a variety of routes. And then the other thing about him is obviously, he's just great in space, man. Just like eluding tacklers. And so I think that the one area that you're really not certain about with Clyde Edwards-Helaire is his blocking. And quite frankly, it's not because he's not a good blocker. It's just because he wasn't asked to do really any blocking at LSU, because every time they dropped back to throw the ball, he was out there running routes with the receivers. So, but I think overall, I think he does present those that skill set that you're looking for. And did he luck out, ending up on the Chiefs roster? Yes, but I also think that from day one, he is going to be the primary running back in that offense. I know Damian Williams is coming off a breakout season, had a great postseason. Some people argue that he should have been the MVP of the Super Bowl. However, and I'm going to use PFF again because I think, this demonstrates where, Damian Williams falls short. When grading him on the different types of runs, the weakest part of his game was running inside in between the tackles. And so I think that Clyde Edwards-Helaire is an improvement compared to, I think he's better in that area than Damian Williams is. So, and then, obviously, the other guys that are in the mix, Darwin Thompson, Darrell Williams, they're all nice role players. But I think that Clyde Edwards-Helaire walks in as the RB1 in that offense. And another great thing about Clyde Edwards-Helaire, if he's on your fantasy team, you could start him right away on a weekly basis as your RB2, and he could emerge as an RB1 down the road, just because when you have Patrick Mahomes at quarterback with his, dual threat skill set and his ability to chuck it downfield, and you have so much speed at the receiver position between Tyreek Hill and McCole Hardman and Sammy Watkins and all those guys, DeMarcus Robinson, and then you add in arguably, I think, the best pass-catching tight end in the NFL in Travis Kelce. When you factor all those things in, I don't think Clyde Edwards-Helaire is going to see a lot of stacked boxes. No. So I think that, this rookie, I think that he really landed in a great spot, and there's really no reason why he shouldn't be able to perform, from day one.
Now, what do you think obviously he could get catched, but as you mentioned, they have those great wide receivers in Hill and Hardman, Robinson. They're okay. Watkins can be great at times. And then, of course, the best tight end in the NFL, and I totally agree with you, is Travis Kelce. Now, what CEH is can catch the ball, as we've noted, but what do you think his overall receptions are going to be? Are they going to be limited because Travis Kelce is going to get so much attention from Mahomes, and because Damian Williams is going to be involved in that passing game? Do you see something like maybe Josh Jacobs, where Josh Jacobs is also a good pass catcher but didn't get as many targets because the Raiders were so filled with not as talented but have pass catchers on the team? Or do you see it being something that you're going to really see come out the light, maybe 60 receptions, 70 receptions, or do you think that's just way too many?
Well, the way I see it is that Raiders offense is a run-first attack, whereas the Andy Reid-led Chiefs, I think that they're more of a passing offense. And so I think that he's going to give you more production than Jacobs did in his rookie year. Now, does that mean that he's going to catch 7 balls? That's asking a lot. But I think that he should be good for, I would say, 3 catches, maybe 4 catches. There are going to be a lot of those situations where, they're going to be blitzing Mahomes. He's going to be on the run. And, he's going to look for this running back either in the flat or on a dump off or check down or something like that. But the great thing with Edwards-Helaire is, he could do more than that. He could be more than a check down guy. So I think there might even be instances where, maybe they line him up as a receiver. They motion him from the backfield and they have him line up as a receiver, because we all know, when it comes to trickery, Andy Reid is unmatched,
Right. Yeah, he's going to put those players in the best position possible. And then I have one more question for you. So no running back on the Chiefs last year ran for more than 500 yards. Does Clyde Edwards-Helaire break that streak? Does he go for more than 500 yards rushing?
Yeah, I definitely think so. I definitely think so. I think that I would say I'm going to be conservative, but I don't see why he can't run for 750 yards and then catch about 50 balls this year. So when you combine the rushing and receiving production, I think that's worth its weight in gold right there.
Yeah, and then they'll get down in the goal line area and they'll give him the ball and touchdowns. And where do you see him this first year? Where the starting point as far as an RB, or is he say an RB 12 or less than that? Where would you pick him as an overall RB?
I would say initially, I would, before we actually see him play, I think that I would rank him slightly below RB12. I would say maybe like somewhere between 15 and 20. So for fantasy purposes, he would be sort of like a second running back that you would start, an RB2 that you would put in your starting lineup on a weekly basis. But then as the season wears on, I think he does have the skill set to develop and flourish as an RB1.
Yeah, I think that's probably good estimation. Get him as cheap as you can, and then probably watch him grow from there.
Absolutely.
And then your second guy, and my second one as well. And it's no homerism whatsoever here. I have to say, no homerism whatsoever. Jonathan Taylor. So let's talk a little bit about what we're going to see out of Jonathan Taylor this year and maybe further on, because this year I think is really the most important year. Not only is because he's a rookie and he's got to show his bones, but he also has a very good running back to compete with in Marlon Mack. With the coronavirus going on and the fact that they can't get out on the field, as much as rookies have in the past, do you think that's going to hinder him, or do you think it's going to be right from the gate, Jonathan Taylor, is probably going to dominate the carries over Marlon Mack? Or how do you see that backfield sort of being split up a little bit?
Well, the coronavirus is going to impact everybody at every position, especially rookies. However, I think that it'll have less of an impact on running backs as opposed to quarterbacks or wide receivers or even tight ends for that matter. I think Jonathan Taylor, what you like about him is that, and you can look at this. You can look at this a couple different ways. Some of the naysayers might tell you, "Oh, well, he's got a lot of tread on his tire." He put up, what was it, over 6,100 yards over 3 years, and that's a lot of carries for any collegiate player, for any running back. And so, to me, I see it as a positive because, number one, he doesn't come in with any major injury concerns. So that tells me that, I don't have any questions. If I'm coaching the team, I don't have any questions about Jonathan Taylor being a sustaining running back, being a workhorse, a bell cow. Somebody I can give the ball to 18 to 20 to 22 times on a weekly basis. And, comparing him to Marlon Mack, Mack is as explosive as Mack can be. Mm-hmm. He is not that type of player. He's just not. He's a good RB2, but on a week-to-week basis, you don't know what you're going to get out of him. He has a lot of inconsistency in his game. Let's just put it that way. And then he also has more injury concerns than Jonathan Taylor. And so I think that it's a great backfield when you add Nyheim Hines to the mix in sort of that Darren Sproles type of role. But I definitely think that Jonathan Taylor is going to be that number one guy. And here's the other thing, by the way. Indianapolis traded up to get Jonathan Taylor. So when a team does that, especially at running back, that means they have big plans for this player, and he's just got a very complete skill set. He's compact at 5'10", 218. He's got great power. And not only does he run with power, he's got that little burst of acceleration, where he could, turn any play into an 80-yard run. And so, the one minor concern that you might have about him is his ability to catch the ball. And really, that always happens with these Wisconsin backs. you know. But
on Dame.
yeah, absolutely. You know, even Melvin Gordon when he came out, you know. But however, you did see some improvement out of him in his last year with the Badgers as far as being a pass catcher. So while he might never be Marshall Faulk, I think that, you know, if if they need him to catch whatever it is, you know, a little pass in the flat, I think he could definitely do that.
Yeah, I think you'll see him run some stick routes, maybe some little out routes, just, you know, something not too difficult. And then also he's capable of the two things that you mentioned over Marlon Mack. He is a better pass catcher, I believe, than Marlon Mack, and he's also Marlon Mack can't do the home run. You know, he'll bust off some chunks of yards or whatever, but he's not going to go the distance. He doesn't have that top end speed that Taylor has. Even though it's not as top end as, say, maybe DeAndre Swift, it's still pretty up there. You know what I mean?
So the way I would look at it is Marlon Mack has more of that short area quickness, whereas Jonathan Taylor is legit home run hitter.
Yeah, exactly. Mm-hmm. And I tell you, I'm thrilled. I can't wait to see him run behind Quentin Nelson. I mean, that to me is just going to be so much fun to watch Nelson just road grade everybody down the line, and then Taylor is just.
No, it's a great spot for him. You know, you got Ryan Kelly at center and Quentin Nelson. I mean, hey, you know, this this backfield altogether, considering all three of those players we just mentioned, might be good enough maybe to make Phillip Rivers look 5 years younger. You know.
Yeah. You never know. I mean, I think that's definitely something that's a capability. Then plus you add Michael Pittman to the fold, Paris Campbell, T.Y. Hilton, Jack Doyle. I mean, this offense is amazingly going to be just hitting on all cylinders, and because of that, Jonathan Taylor is also going to be, if you're hitting on all cylinders, you're going to be on the field more, and the more you're on the field, that means more fantasy points are going to be working for you. So definitely great add to your team in Dynasty.
Yeah, and here's the thing, you know, when they have the ball at the goal line, I don't see anybody else getting the ball outside of Jonathan Taylor. And then especially when you have a statue at running back at Phillip Rivers, you know, there's no way that Rivers is gonna run a quarterback draw. You know, if that happens maybe once in a season, that's, you know, that even it'll be miraculous. But I think that I think he is going to be a goal line runner as well, and that's going to translate to a lot of touchdowns in this offense, I believe. Now, you know, the one major concern though, and I would be remiss if I didn't mention it, he did have 18 fumbles with the Badgers.
That's a good point. That is a good point. It's him holding on to the ball. I think if they do see him fumble a little bit, I think Marlon Mack, because Marlon Mack is a good red zone runner, he might be getting those if Taylor, you know, puts the ball on the ground a little bit.
Sure.
Now, one other question before we move on to number 3. Marlon Mack is in a contract this year. Do you think they're going to hold on to him, or do you think they're just going to let him go and it's just going to be full bell cow Jonathan Taylor starting in 2021?
I think it all depends on how Marlon Mack performs. You know, if he does well in that role and he becomes an integral part of the offense, where, you know, he becomes a solid blocker, a solid pass catcher, he could stay healthy. I think that he'll earn himself a new contract. I don't know what he's going to be looking for in terms of dollars and cents, but I mean, quite frankly, I don't see any other team out there, if he does become a free agent, I don't see any other team out there that's going to make him, you know, their feature running back. So I think it would behoove him to try to stay with the Colts and be part of a potentially a potent offense with that offensive line and you know, those young receivers, if they can develop. You know, I would hope to be part of that whole mix. And you do have a good head coach there, so who knows? You know, maybe in 2 or 3 years, you know, you guys can win a Super Bowl. So I would want to stick around if I'm Marlon Mack.
Yeah, that's you just take a cut and pay to hanging around a winner. Yeah, I could definitely see that. So number 3, we differ a little bit. Not too much. You have one guy over one guy that I have. So, 3 and 4 are kind of the same. But your guy, number 3, from the Baltimore Ravens, J.K. Dobbins. So
yeah. So with J.K. Dobbins, you're getting a combination of vision, burst, lower body strength, 5'9", 217 pounds. But what I do really, really like about him, what I'm excited about with J.K. Dobbins is not only the fact that, he's the type of guy who can get you to tough yards, but he also has that vision, that ability to anticipate holes before they open up and create those big plays as well. And look, Ohio State is one of those teams. They're on TV every week, so we all know that he can run routes, he could catch balls. He's a competent pass blocker as well. Now, the one thing that I would caution fantasy owners on with J.K. Dobbins is if you do decide to keep him, if it's a dynasty league, and if you decide to keep him on your active roster, don't expect much out of him early on, just because he lands in a situation with some very good running backs on the team already. Ingram is Mark Ingram is just not going to go anywhere. He's coming off a great year. He gained over 1,100 yards and scored 10 touchdowns. Gus Edwards also had a great year. Yep. And then you also have Justice Hill as a change of pace back. And so I would say that, early on, I think Ingram is still going to be the RB1, and they're going to slowly integrate Dobbins into the attack. But, the one thing that, again, that would concern me about J.K. Dobbins, and the reason why I don't think you're going to be able to start him most weeks in his rookie year, is because when you take a look at Ingram, 9 of his 10 touchdowns were scored within 10 yards. So at the goal line, they were all goal line carries that he scored on, 9 of those 10 touchdowns. So he's going to continue being the main man who's going to be getting the rock, when they're inside the 10-yard line. And then when you combine that with the fact that Lamar Jackson is the most electrifying running quarterback in the league, that just doesn't leave a lot for J.K. Dobbins in terms of getting those types of carries that he can score on. But I do think that in his second year, because we are talking dynasty, I do think in the second year, he is going to be the main man. And even GM Eric DaCosta acknowledged it. He goes, hey, we made this pick with the vision in mind that he is going to be a 3-down back. So there's no doubt in my mind that he's going to be able to perform and he's going to be able to do all those different things to stay on the field, catch the ball, inside runner, outside runner, home run hitter, all of those things. The one thing that would concern me slightly about J.K. Dobbins is that I saw him kind of wear down a little bit toward the end of the season. So I don't think that he is the type of plow horse that Jonathan Taylor is, and that's why I put Jonathan Taylor ahead of him. But I do think that he is an RB1, and I think that, even if Ingram is not around a year from now, I think when you combine him with Gus Edwards and Justice Hill and Lamar Jackson running the ball as well, I think that it's a very nice situation for Dobbins to be in.
Yeah, and that was the reason why I switched with Dobbins and put him 4th, is because I don't, even if you clear the running backs, which I don't think they're going to do. Maybe Ingram will be gone. I don't know. Maybe Edwards will be gone. I don't know. But they're going to keep 1 or 2 of these guys with Dobbins. And then when you put Lamar Jackson and taking carries away from Dobbins, that's also a problem. So yeah, he's a good blocker. In fact, out of 140 pass pro opportunities, he only allowed 4 pressures. So he's about as probably the best blocking running back in this entire draft. So that's just great. And then you say he has some good he's a good receiver. He's not the greatest. He's not, the worst.
Well, they did split him out wide at times, so he does have some versatility in that department.
He does. He is a good receiver. I just wouldn't say he's like the best or the worst. He's
right. No, he's not.
So those are just some of the things why I didn't put him there. But if he wasn't on a different team, I wouldn't have any problems with J.K. Dobbins being my third running back.
Sure. So who is your number 3?
My number 3 is Cam Akers.
Okay.
And it's for all the reasons why. He's someone that is, to me, it's sort of like a Dalvin Cook kind of clone. He's going to be a good receiver out of the backfield. He's a good running back, and the Rams really don't have anybody that's going to shake your boots. And Darrell Henderson, no. Kelly, no. So I really think that Cam Akers, outside of CEH, is going to be the lone running back on a team where everybody else is trying to fight for time. Cam Akers is probably unless he just starts out very slow, is going to be probably the bell cow back for the Rams. And that's kind of why I have him there. What are your thoughts on him?
Yeah, I actually have Cam Akers ranked as my number 4 guy, and I do think that over the short term, I think that he's going to give you more production than J.K. Dobbins just because of the situation that he's in. I think that, from day one, he's going to be – I know they're saying that it's going to be a committee backfield, but I don't believe it. I think that Cam Akers is going to be the RB1 early on from the word jump, I believe, because, compared to Darrell Henderson – Akers has more size, more power to run against those stacked boxes, and he's also a more patient runner than Darrell Henderson is. And then going down the depth chart, they do have Malcolm Brown. Now, he could steal some goal line carries, and they do like Malcolm Brown a lot, the coaching staff does. However, he's just not that explosive. And so I like Cam Akers over Dobbins in the short term. However, I think that over the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years, I'd rather have J.K. Dobbins, but they're very close.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think that it's almost a fine line between what you feel and what you want as far as dynasty goes. I think you could put either one of those at, 50. It's almost a coin toss. Either way you're going to go, you're probably going to be all right. And then we have your next guy. And I don't know, is there a little homerism going on here with AJ Dillon?
No, to me, it's all about upside. I do like the fact that they took AJ Dillon in the second round, which, if you follow the Packers, very rarely, did they go up to the second round to take a running back. Usually they take these guys in the 4th or 5th round, 6th round. But the fact that they invested such a high pick in this player, to me, tells me, it should tell all the fans out there that they have big plans for A.J. Dillon. And so I see him entering the running back rotation immediately with Aaron Jones and Jamal Williams. I think initially, he will be the number 3 guy, but I could see him eventually transitioning to being the number 2 running back just because he is more explosive than Jamal Williams. Now, you're taking a look at a king-sized running back at nearly 250 pounds in A.J. Dillon, but he is light on his feet. You take a look at his combine numbers, 4.52, a 41-inch vertical, which tells you about his ability to accelerate his explosiveness. He's just one of those types of runners that, some people want to compare him to Derrick Henry. I do see some similarities, maybe a LeGarrette Blount, that type of guy. But, you give him a little bit of space and he can barrel through guys and he can pop off a few big runs. He's just not a jump cut type of running back. He's not a guy who could stop his feet, stop on a dime. No, he's not that running back. But I think that he can be definitely a plow horse and definitely be that 4-minute back at the end of games. Like even this year in the upcoming season, if the Packers are up, let's say by 3 touchdowns and it's the 4th quarter, why not give the ball to A.J. Dillon, your big 250-pound horse? And I think that, he can gain some key first downs to finish off the game. Here's the thing about A.J. Dillon that a lot of people question were his hands and the fact that he just wasn't used a lot as a pass catcher at Boston College. However, the area scout that really did his homework on A.J. Dillon prior to the draft, he attended a lot of those midweek practices. And during those practice sessions, they did throw A.J. Dillon the ball a lot, and he did show that he has, good enough hands to be an option in terms of catching the ball. So I wouldn't be too concerned about that. I know, people that maybe weren't too familiar with A.J. Dillon. You look at his stat sheet, but I'm not too concerned about it. So yeah, he only had 21 receptions in 3 years, but to me, I wouldn't be too concerned about that with A.J. Dillon. I think eventually now what's going to happen in year 2, as I mentioned earlier in the show, both Aaron Jones and Jamal Williams are going to be entering their walk years. And so I expect the Packers to re-sign Aaron Jones. So once that happens, then, Dillon and Jones could form that, thunder and lightning type of combo. And that's great because, I think that, Dillon could be the guy who scores 10 plus touchdowns and maybe come very close to 1,000 yards in that role. However, if they don't sign Jones and they bring back Jamal Williams, then A.J. Dillon becomes, the unquestioned number one guy in that Green Bay backfield. So that's something to pay attention to. But as far as his rookie season is concerned, I do expect A.J. Dillon to eventually supplant Williams as the RB2 on that team. And I'm excited about A.J. Dillon.
I would be too. I liked him a lot. I think he got a bad rep just because he came out of Boston College, and is someone that just looks like, as you mentioned, just a big old bowling ball running down the field. And I think he a lot of misconceptions about him because he isn't the slasher cutter running back that we see pretty much becoming more in fashion with the NFL. So then he goes and he tests at the combine and he has very good time for someone his speed or size. And the more he tests, the better people are looking at him. So do you think Jamal Williams even has a shot at even being anything? I mean, I could see even Dillon, the way they miss and match and put Aaron Jones as the lead back for 3 games and then Jamal Williams for 3 games and whatever. I can see Dillon just taking this whole thing over.
Well, I think a lot is going to depend on what happens during the preseason. And if Dillon just balls out, and they also have another young UDFA running back, Tim Patrick. If one or both of these young players just really ball out, I could see the Packers either cutting Jamal Williams or trying to trade him. That is definitely a possibility, and that's nothing against Jamal Williams because he's actually their best pass protector. And he's great at catching the ball. You take a look at his catch rate; it's somewhere like in the 85 to 87% area. It's just that he just really lacks any type of juice.
Yeah,
and that's exactly what Dillon gives you. And by the way, just another little point I'd like to point out about Dillon. There's some similarities between Dillon and Cam Akers in that they both played behind bad offensive lines. And they both faced a lot of stacked boxes, and they both produced despite the obstacles that were before them. So that's another thing to like about A.J. Dillon as well.
And then I also wanted to touch on pointing about receptions, and I think this is probably the biggest weakness of college football as far as statistics goes, is running backs and receptions. Believe me, you cannot judge a running back about how well he can catch the ball by just looking at his receptions. There are so many colleges out there that do not use the running back as someone who's catching the ball out of the backfield. So you can have a very good running back who can catch the ball, but he might not put up those great numbers, those great reception numbers as maybe 1 or 2 coming out of college will. So judge him, as you're saying, by watching him play as the scout did, as we'll see in the preseason coming up, that how well he can catch the ball before making a decision on whether he does or not. Do not look at statistics as a measurement or way a running back can catch the ball or not.
100%.
So here we go again with the little flip flop. I actually had DeAndre Swift ahead of AJ Dillon, but you don't, which is fine. I think again it's a 50-50 flip for both. Why AJ Dillon over DeAndre Swift, who can do pretty much everything, who might be even the best talented running back off the board as far as pure talent over AJ Dillon?
Well, as far as DeAndre Swift goes, yes, I have him as my number 6 guy. And you're looking at a smooth runner. He's got the power, speed, agility. He can be a 3-down back. And I do think he will be the number 1 running back in Detroit. However, the reason why, actually, there are 2 reasons why I put him at number 6 instead of number 5, and I put Dillon ahead of him, is because, number 1, he never topped 200 carries at the University of Georgia. And so you could call him a feature back, but what does that really mean, with the Lions? Because I don't see him being the type of player who could be the classic plow horse who's going to get 25 touches a game. I don't see that. He will get more than the other players. However, those other players are not going anywhere. Kerryon Johnson is still very young. He's only going to be entering his 3rd year. Now, I do realize that, he's missed 14 of a possible 32 games as a pro. Not a good thing. However, I think that with DeAndre Swift being there, I think that's going to actually help KJ be a better performer in that they're going to take a bit of a load off his shoulders. And then the other player that they have there in the backfield is Bo Scarborough. And, I mean, this guy looked really good late in the season last year. And here's my main concern with DeAndre Swift is how many goal line carries is he going to see? Because when you have a hammer like Bo Scarborough there, that potentially could take away 5, 6, 7 touchdowns from the stat sheet away from DeAndre Swift. So, that's really those are the reasons why I put DeAndre Swift at number 6. That's, nothing against what he can do or what his skill set is. I do definitely think he's way better than Kerryon Johnson. However, they're going to use all 3 of those guys.
So it's going to be a major rotation, and so a prime spot for CAH is probably just on the opposite spectrum for DeAndre Swift. He ended up probably in one of the worst spots for someone his talent could probably end up in.
Well, I mean, it is a good offense, though. You do have Matthew Stafford there. Hopefully he stays healthy. And so you do have some good receivers in there on the team between Jones and Galladay, and Hawkinson at tight end. I mean, I think that DeAndre Swift is surrounded by some good players. It's just that it's, as you said, it's going to be a rotation in the backfield.
Yeah, unfortunately, that's going to be the case. And then plus you have Matt Stafford, who's going to be throwing deep quite a bit, and then have, especially to Kenny Galladay. So even if he's on the field, you're going to be losing 60-something plus yards, 40 to 60 plus yards at any given moment, because Matthew Stafford is just giving the ball up to Kenny Galladay. And then, if what you're saying is true, which could very well be true, because Scarborough really proved himself to be a short yardage kind of guy, if they go 40 to 60, they get the ball down, inside the 5. Well, Swift isn't going to be in there. Scarborough is going to be in there. So now you're taking not only yardage away from the guy, but you're also taking touchdowns.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think that caps his upside just a bit.
It does. And I agree with you. So now we'll go to one of the guys that I really don't like. I don't see him any talent. I don't see him doing anything on this team whatsoever. I'm very negative on him, but maybe you can convince me a little bit. And that's Keyshawn Vaughn.
Right. Keyshawn Vaughn, my number 7 running back on this list. To me, he is he's not the most exciting running back out there. He's a meat and potatoes grinder. He can bang it inside. And he's got that short area quickness. He's got that little burst inside to where if he sees a hole, he could erupt for some 12-yard gains, 10-yard gains. I don't see him being a home run hitter by any means. But there are other parts of his game that are going to translate well to the next level. He's a natural pass catcher. And on top of that, he is a competent blocker. And he's going to be, look, compared to like some of these other guys that they have on the team, Ronald Jones is just a joke in terms of being a pass protector, So, and then, Dare Ogunbowale, I don't think he brings much power to the mix either in terms of being a pass protector. And so for those reasons.
This is where I disagree with you on this. Okay, so you're right. I think Vaughn is someone that is going to be the pass blocker. There's no doubt about it because, as you mentioned, Ronald Jones can't do it. But Ronald Jones is probably a better short yardage guy than Vaughn. And then what you have is, especially bring Ogunbowale in there, Bowale is someone that's outclasses Vaughn in the pass catching ability. So this is my problem with Vaughn is exactly that. He's a good pass protector, but who cares? You know what I'm saying? That's not going to keep him catching the ball because that's going to be Ogunbowale's job. He's not going to be short yardage because that's going to be Ronald Jones's job. Is he going to be in between the 20s? Who knows? I just don't really see him fitting anywhere in this offense.
Well, I have to disagree on Ronald Jones being the player who's going to get the ball at the goal line. Now, I do recognize the fact that Ronald Jones has got a little bit more explosiveness to him. But, Bruce Arians, he showed you his lack of patience with Ronald Jones. And I think that if Keyshawn Vaughn on any given series, if he's in there, once they get the ball at the 25-yard line, once they reach the 5, I think he's going to continue getting the ball. I just think that, Ronald Jones, I think, when you have a quarterback like Tom Brady, 43 years old, I think one of the number one priorities, if not the biggest priority for the offense, is to protect him. He was a statue at 25 years old, and at 43, he's not any more mobile than he was as a young player. And so I think for that reason alone, I think Keyshawn Vaughn is going to be the main player at the goal line. And I just think he's just very solid. Nothing spectacular, but very solid. I think he can gain the tough yards. I think he does have some vision. And see the difference between a Keyshawn Vaughn and a Jonathan Taylor, for instance, if they see the same crease, Jonathan Taylor is going to exploit it for a 40-yard gain, whereas Keyshawn Vaughn, maybe he'll get you 15 yards, So I think that's the major difference between him and some of the upper echelon running backs in this rookie class. But I think, overall, I think for fantasy purposes, the fact that he's going to see volume, I think makes him a valuable runner. Now, how does that translate on a weekly basis when you're putting your fantasy lineup together? I would say it could be a good flex, Right now, he's probably a matchups play as a rookie until we see, what type of player he's going to develop into. But I think in a good matchup, I think it could be a good flex play for now.
See, I see him as someone that people are going to draft, and then they're going to be on a taxi squad. And then they're going to forget that he's on the taxi squad because he does nothing, absolutely nothing on the football field. So 3 or 4 years later, someone's going to look at their taxi squad and go, "Oh yeah, I forgot I drafted Keyshawn Vaughn." I'm being sarcastic there a little bit.
No, you might be right. You might be right. Look, it could be a case where, I don't know, the way they split up carries, the way they split up touches overall. He might only end up with like 400 to 500 yards and what, maybe 5 touchdowns. And really that doesn't really do much in fantasy. So definitely not somebody that you want on your active roster. But, I think that he will be on the field a lot. And because of that volume, I think he does carry some value. So.
Yeah, and I don't disagree with you there, especially as we're kind of talking about with the seventh rookie running back, sort of down the line. That's pretty much what you're starting to want to get is volume. And, as we see with DeAndre Swift, he's probably a better, he is a better running back. He's not going to get the volume that Keyshawn Vaughn is possibly going to get. I think really the sticking points between you and I is that you think he's going to get it and I don't. But I don't think that we disagree that we could be easily wrong on either case. I could be wrong and you could be absolutely right. And I'm not going to say, no, that's not going to happen. And I think you feel the same way, that I could be right and you could be wrong. And there's not, I don't think there's a good enough database right now to say either one of us are right or wrong, is pretty much what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, well, look, I mean, if you draft Keyshawn Vaughn, you're not going to be expecting a ton out of him right away anyway. So I would say, if you want to be conservative, if you want to play it safe, just park him on your practice squad where he can't hurt you. And if it turns out to be anything great, you could always elevate him during the year or in year 2.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Especially if Ronald Jones continues to sort of sputter. I mean, he got better last year, but he wasn't blowing the socks off. He just got better. So, if it takes him, another year just to sputter and get a little bit better, then who knows what the potentiality is there. And our next guy, and I have to ask you right away. So we got LaMichael Pirine next, and
right.
there was initial change. When you first sent me a couple days ago, Zach Moss was over LaMichael Pirine. Now LaMichael Pirine is over Zach Moss. Why make that change?
Well, I just like LaMichael Pirine better as an overall player. And so I know that Zach Moss enters a great situation where he immediately is going to be the RB2 on that team behind Devin Singletary. And so he's going to see early carries during his rookie campaign. There's no doubt about that. Whereas LaMichael Pirine is right now the RB3 in the New York Jets offense. However, looking forward in year 2, I don't see the Jets holding on to Le'Veon Bell past 2020. And then Frank Gore, if he does stick around, he's going to be he's automatically your number 2 guy. And so I think that's a great opportunity in year 2 for LaMichael Pirine to take over as the RB1 in the New York Jets offense. So whereas Zach Moss, yes, high effort back, 222 pounds, has some lateral ability, but he doesn't always play big. And the more I watched him, play in college at Utah, the more I saw where, he tried to bounce a lot of those runs to the outside. And I think he sort of fancies himself as this type of player who could be quick, elusive, and can bust off, those 80-yard runs as a perimeter runner. But he's not that explosive, in my opinion. He's got 4.65 speed, and he sort of gears down when he tries to change direction. So he's not a natural when it comes to, planting his foot and stopping on a dime and trying to make guys miss. And so the best thing about him is he'll have opportunity, and he's going to get a lot of carries behind Devin Singletary because Devin Singletary's not a big back, and he's going to need help out there. So I think Zach Moss is going to provide a little muscle. Maybe he'll get a few goal line carries, but I think over the long term, I don't see him ever becoming a star. I don't ever see him being an RB1, and so I like Pirine better. Just because number 1, as I mentioned, he could be the number 1 guy starting next year for the New York Jets. And it's funny that Pirine ends up on the same team as Frank Gore, because when I initially did my evaluation of Pirine, he kind of reminds me of Frank Gore a little bit in that, he is the type of inside runner who can find those little spaces and get through them. It can get skinny in trash, in the trenches, and can gain positive yardage. He's got that thick lower body. He's a very smart player. And here's the other thing, and we're not talking about intangibles, but I will mention that Pirine is a high character individual. He was one of the hardest workers on the team over at Florida. But just didn't get a lot of carries. He wasn't kind of like in a committee situation over there. But when you combine the fact that he is a power runner, he can make the first man miss. He does have some lateral ability to him, and he can catch the ball. I think Pirine has a better chance of being an effective RB1 than Zach Moss going into years 2, 3, 4, so on and so forth.
Yeah, and that's a good point. Obviously Gore is not going to be there, and as you mentioned, they're pretty much alike. I was going to mention that probably the really slight difference right now, if you just took their traits, Pirine is a better pass catcher than Gore ever was. But other than that, they're kind of very similar kind of backs. I think the one thing that worries me about Moss is his injury history. I think that also is something that could fold into having Pirine over Moss.
Yeah. And so the other thing is that when comparing him even to Devin Singletary, I think Singletary has him beat in terms of vision, balance, quick feet, and Singletary just has more juice than Zach Moss. So as long as Singletary stays healthy, I don't see Moss overtaking him.
I actually see, like, with Singletary being between the 20s guy, and then Moss sort of being the guy that's going to hammer it home. Which is going to really affect Singletary as far as fantasy value, because he wasn't even scoring that many touchdowns as it is. He's probably, without Moss, probably someone that's like a six to 8 touchdown kind of guy. But now with Moss, it's probably going to, cap at 4.
Yeah, definitely. I don't disagree.
And then the next guy we have up is Gibson, Antonio Gibson, the gadget guy, the runner receiver who knows extraordinaire. So let's talk about him and the Redskins and every single running back that's on the Redskins. Ready, go. Every single one of them.
Yeah, I'll give them to you. Adrian Peterson, Darius Geis, Bryce Love, Peyton Barber, Josh Ferguson, J.D. McKissick, and Antonio Gibson. So that's, by my count, that's 7 backs that they have on the roster currently. So that's the thing, man. I love Antonio Gibson's skill set. He's a slasher. He's got elite burst, change of direction skills, and he has size. He's not a small guy. He's 220 pounds, about 6 feet, 6'1", whatever he is. But that's a big runner right there. And with his speed, his ceiling is sky high. So, but he comes with a lot of questions. Is he going to be used as a running back? Is he going to be used as a receiver? People tend to think that he's going to be used as a running back, but how does this sort out now? Darius Geis, at least in the early going before he gets hurt again, Darius Geis is going to be the number 1 guy there in DC. But then what happens with Adrian Peterson? Is he going to stick around? I still think Peterson's a really good back, but is he going to stick around now with Peyton Barber there? And so Bryce Love, he's still recovering from his ACL. Josh Ferguson, I don't see him sticking around. And then McKissick is more of like a special teams pass catching type of player. So I think that Antonio Gibson is definitely somebody that is going to help you in years 2 and 3. As far as what he's going to do in his rookie season, who knows? It's from a week-to-week basis. He can go from getting 5 touches to 7 touches to maybe not seeing the ball at all in any given game. And so if I were to compare him to anybody, I could see his upside being Alvin Kamara, and then on the lower end, maybe him being a Ty Montgomery type. Probably where he ends up is somewhere in between. But he's the type of player that, again, we're talking about Dynasty. I love his upside. I'm going to put him on my practice squad, and hopefully he'll show some signs. And then in year 2, he'll assume a bigger role.
Yeah, you hope, and hopefully it's a bigger or better role than Ty Montgomery ever had. But you're right, that's a good comparison. Both running back, wide receiver, but not really good at either position. So, and then he's buried. As you mentioned, all those names, it's just. Wow. Obviously, Adrian Peterson is going to have more than 2 years probably left, if that. And then Bryce Love, could be gone. Who knows if he'll ever play? So those are some of the players, but still, it's just not much daylight as far as playing time is going to go for him. Then where are we at? Number 9. And number 9.
Well, I'm at number. That was number 10 for me. I'm at number 11. Where are you on your list?
Oh, I just probably counted wrong. I'm at the same spot. I just my 1, 2, 3s aren't as suave as yours right now. So at that spot we have it's from the San Diego. See, I'm gonna do that. You said you did it last week.
I did it. Yeah.
We're gonna do this like all year long. The Los Angeles Chargers, Josh Kelly. And to me, Josh Kelly is sort of like an Austin Eckler, Justin Jackson kind of guy. So I think they drafted him because if Eckler goes down, they have Kelly to sort of back him up. Jackson goes down, Kelly has him to back up Jackson, sort of in between those two guys. What do you see as far as he goes?
Yeah, I think it's a good situation for Josh Kelly. I think that Austin Eckler, he's coming off a great year, but he needs help. He needs help in the backfield. There's no question. And so Kelly is that type of sturdy runner. You know, he could plow his way past tackles. And, you know, some people, you know, kind of see him as a straight ahead guy who just runs into defenders, but he does have an occasional spin move that he'll use every now and then. And he could also cut inside or outside, you know, depending, you know, if on any given run, you know, the guy playing the edge, if he's in a one-on-one situation, he can cut inside or outside of that defender. So he does have those skills. Not the most exciting runner, but as I said, powerful, terrific hands. As a pass catcher, he can contort to a lot of those off-target throws. And as a pass protector, he puts up a good effort. You know, he's not going to shortchange you, you know, and so I think that where he really excels is as an in-between the tackles type of runner. And so I think that he's very similar to Justin Jackson. I think that these two players are going to battle it out as far as who's going to emerge as the RB2 in that offense. Maybe Jackson's a little bit more agile than Kelly, but I see them being very much the same type of player. And if any one of the two emerges as, you know, if Kelly emerges as the RB2, I think there are going to be a lot of carries there for him. I think there'll be a few touchdowns because, again, Eckler is as exciting as he is. And for all that he does, he's just not that 230-pound workhorse, and he's going to need help in that backfield. So, yes, Josh Kelly, to me, can make an immediate impact, and he's my number 11 guy.
Yeah, and I agree. I think we're going to see, as you know, especially as far as we're down now with these running backs. I think Kelly has something to offer, especially if one of the two goes down. I really think that the problem is that both are there and they're both young, Jackson and Eckler, and so the playing time for Kelly as a third string running back just isn't enough to propel him in, say, the top 8 kind of running back range. And then now we have Tennessee backup who, if progressions are right, we had Derrick Henry, who had over 400 touches last year, went into the AFC Championship game and was completely broken down by then. Yeah. His backup is Darrington Evans.
Right.
So Darrington Evans for 1 year could actually be something. What's your thoughts on him?
Well, yeah, Darrington Evans is my number 12 player on this list. And so I think that it's an ideal situation where, you know, Henry does need help. However, you take a look at that roster, who's there? You know, who's there besides Derrick Henry? David Fluellen, Kari Blossengame, who's more of a fullback. I mean, come on, you know. So I think that the Titans, you know, they really needed to add somebody to that mix. And Darrington Evans is sort of like not like Henry in any way. You know, he could be more of like that Mr. Outside to Henry's Mr. Inside. But Evans is an exciting player in his own right. Smooth running back. He's got great lateral burst, a nice spin move. And, you know, as I said, you know, he doesn't have any established running backs ahead of him. Now, you know, the one one slight concern is he wasn't targeted much in the passing game. Evans was over at Appalachian State, um, but I think that in that scheme, in that outside zone scheme, I think Evans is going to be able to find some daylight on some plays, and he's going to be able to display that quickness, that speed that he has,
Yeah.
and so I see him as a very nice change of pace back. Now, if Henry were to ever go down, I can't answer how Darrington Evans would fare. He doesn't seem like the type of player that can handle 22 carries. However, I think in the role that he's in right now, I think he can definitely excel.
Yeah, and he's going to give that opposite perspective that Derrick Henry, and just beat him down, and then you give the ball to Darrington Evans, and he's gone. So I think he's definitely one of those just counterbalance kind of guy to Henry, and he's going to do well. I mean, he's obviously not going to be, as you say, someone that you can count on for 20 carries a game, but I think he definitely offers a different look for the defenses to contain. And another speedy guy, Eno Benjamin. Let's talk a little bit about him and maybe his spot on the Cardinals.
Well, originally I had Eno Benjamin ahead of Darrington Evans, but I flip-flopped them just because taking a look at the Cardinals roster, I mean, Eno Benjamin, he's going to have to jump over some guys if he wants to see any playing time this year. In addition to having Kenyon Drake as the RB1, you have Chase Edmonds and DJ Foster. And so, those are established veterans that he's going to have to beat out. So I think that at least as a rookie, I think Eno Benjamin, they're probably going to put him on the practice squad. Unless you have any big injuries, I could see Eno Benjamin starting off on the practice squad, but I do like his upside. He's very shifty, not a big runner, 5'9", 195 pounds, but, he brings you agility, acceleration. He's got those quick jump cuts, and he's a creative runner. Whereas, I watched him a lot where, he ran against some stacked boxes, and, he's not the type of guy who's going to come at you full straight ahead, full steam ahead, but he kind of contorted his body a lot of times, and he tried to find spaces sideways. So I kind of like that. I like his creativity in fighting for tough yards. But what really I think what really impresses you about Eno Benjamin is that in his 2 seasons as a starter at Arizona State, he recorded 77 receptions, and so he's very comfortable at running routes, and I think that eventually, if he gets any luck in years 2 or 3, where, Foster's off the team or Chase Edmonds ends up with an injury or something, I think that, his absolute highest upside, I'm talking about Eno Benjamin, is maybe developing into an Austin Eckler type, where, he could catch a lot of passes and also be, that type of shifty runner that can make some big plays. I think right now, though, I see him as more of a third down back, if he ever gets that opportunity to be a part of the active roster and not end up on the practice squad.
Yeah, the 7th round is really, something that's telling, but I was actually surprised he fell that far. I really had him somewhere around the 5th round, and to have him go in the 7th was kind of surprising. And I think he's a great fit for that Cardinals offense. They spread wide, they pass. So as you mentioned, he's going to catch the ball. And then you have him just going through those gaps, A, B, C, whatever gaps are available for him, that Kenyon Drake excels at doing as well. But I think Benjamin's even quicker. So yeah, it's a great spot for Benjamin. Just, overcoming that 7th round bias might be sort of difficult for him. And then sort of the last 2 guys, we have Anthony McFarland from Pittsburgh. That's at Pittsburgh. And then JaMycal Hasty, just another 49er guy. I don't really know as far as how much he's going to be doing. So let's talk about McFarland and Hasty a little bit.
Yeah, McFarland is a smaller back, twitchy running back. He could cut on a dime. He's a big play waiting to happen. You know, we all remember the big game that he had against Ohio State back in 2018, where he ripped off some 80-yard run, a couple of 80-yard runs, quick feet, deadly in space. Hey, look, if James Conner goes down, McFarland's going to see some time, you know. So I think that's the upside with him. I think that he will make the team, and I think he will have a role. It just depends on what kind of role or how big of a role he's going to have in that Steeler offense.
I
And
think
then go ahead.
to interrupt you a little bit. I think as much as we're talking Dillon and Williams, we're talking McFarland and Benny Snell, and Dillon is so much better probably than Williams. I think McFarland is that much better than Benny Snell.
Yeah, definitely more versatile for sure. And then the other player that I want to touch on is JaMycal Hasty. And so the reason why I listed him is because now I know that they do have a lot of runners in that San Francisco backfield, but they did get rid of Matt Breida.
True.
And so I think Hasty could be competing for a roster spot with Jerick McKinnon, because McKinnon's, I mean, it's how long has it been? I mean, it's taken him like about 2 years to recover from that knee injury, right? So,
right.
I mean, he's no given, you know, to make the team. And so if Hasty could make it as the RB4, what you do like about the 49ers is that they use all of their running backs.
Yep.
I mean, as a matter of fact, last year in 2019, 4 backs on that team had at least 30 touches, and all of them scored touchdowns.
Wow.
So you know, I'm just saying, JaMycal Hasty, you know, he could have some type of role on that team. And again, we're talking about dynasty, so not somebody that you want on your active roster, a taxi squad player who could develop into something. Because, you know, Kyle Shanahan knows a thing or two about, you know, about the running game. And, you know, a lot of running backs seem to excel under Kyle Shanahan. If Hasty ever gets his chance at some point, whether it's in 2022 or 2023, you could have something here with the young running back.
Yeah, and why not? Like you said, he's in a great position, great team. You know, we don't know Raheem Mostert. He had a good year last year. Doesn't mean he's going to have a good year this year. We don't know anything about Jerick McKinnon as far as him bouncing back. Even if he can he play? You know, with that injury, I mean, is he going to be slower? Is he not going to be able to progress as much as, you know, what they brought him in for? So when you're looking, you know, at a 5th round, 6th round pick off your draft board in JaMycal Hasty, you know, why not? I mean, the situation's great for his talent.
The other thing about Hasty that's going to help him a lot is the fact that he does have a lot of experience playing special teams at the collegiate level over at Baylor. And so that might be the edge for him in making the team over Jerick McKinnon.
Totally agree there. There's definitely an opportunity. So as we're wrapping up, Ralph, any last parting shots you'd like to add?
You know, it's just basically, you know, we're talking about running backs. I think overall, I think this was a strong running backs class. You know, I know that a lot was made about the wide receivers, but I do think there are some running backs here, at least a half dozen running backs in this class that could be, you know, potentially bell cow type of performers, and that could help your fantasy team, you know, for the next 3, 4, 5 years. So yes, you know, if you haven't had your fantasy draft yet, you know, don't discount these running backs. Don't discount the running back position, because as we said, you know, it's not going to take a long time for a lot of these players, a lot of these backs to, you know, to emerge, because the shelf life with a lot of these backs isn't very long with these veteran backs, and they happen to get hurt a lot. You know, maybe the only position that suffers even more injuries than running backs is offensive line. Offensive linemen go down all the time, but running backs are close in that department. And so, you know, your RB3 in September could easily be your RB1 in you know, in late November. You know,
yeah,
so
totally, we could definitely see all that All right, Ralph. Thank you. Glad we could do running backs this week. Wide receivers next week. Sound good to you?
Sounds great, man.
All right. So you can catch Ralph on Twitter at Reverend Ralph. You can catch me on Twitter at RFL Red Zone. Everybody have a great night. Take care, Ralph.
All right, take care.